huko juu.
We are smoking. Vijana wewe. Yote hapa tunaona. Hayo si ni bagani. Vijana bana. Kitali nile maji. Ya. Ayo mama na mananyua. Kuja. Tupatane mbele. Tupatane mbele.
Guys, share live, share the live. Currently we are at Kibera. Share the live and also make sure if you are new here, make sure you guys are subscribing. Make sure you are subscribing. If you are new here, make sure you're subscribing, guys. So currently that is the current situation. These people they wanataka kufika town. Meanwhile kunayo police like washaekwa hapa the side. So kupita ni ngumu, totally kupita ni ngumu. So if you are new here guys, make sure you guys share the live. Vijana hawezi tulia, that is something that is happening. That is the current situation that is happening here in Kibera. So if you're here, make sure you guys are subscribing to the channel. Make sure you guys share this live. Yeah. Hapa this is now Kibera. That is Kibera. If you know Kibera, Kachekera. Yeah. Hii ndio Kibera.
people actually send themselves. You tell them, come with a placard, come with everything. So it moves from being one team's idea to everyone's idea. So it's owned by everyone. We notify the police and said on Tuesday we're going to go there. And we go there on Tuesday. There are many people. The police come as usual, tear gas. We say we're going to go back on Thursday. Then we go back on Thursday. Then we say we're going to go back the following week. At every single juncture, we let the police know we're going back. And you're going to be many. But what they decide to do, the state hasn't changed its tactics. So week 1, that's when the abduction started. People get arrested. Then Law Society of Kenya, Faith Thiambo, I'm a big fan. I think she's a patriot, and I think she's the best so far under the new constitution dispensation. So the police do what they normally do. They arrest hundreds of people, like 400 people are taken to Central, Kamkunji, all over. The lawyers go and LSK fights for them. Some are taken to court, and the court acquits. So this boldens for the people to go back to the streets. Now, the following week, which is this week now, politicians realize they're losing the narrative. And what do politicians do every time? They hire goons. But before the goons were hired, 2 days earlier, we told the police, we went online and said they're planning to destroy the city. They're planning to come and mess the city. Because we had 2 previous protests the previous week. Not a single injury, not a single destruction. I have a picture that I'm going to share today of a lady whose car back window was broken by the police with a tear gas grenade outside from the Basilica.
I think
people covered the car with matawi. Like they took leaves, covered the car, and then for the lady to come so she could drive the car home safely without any loss. That last week on Thursday and even that Tuesday, people walked home safely. No muggings, not a single robbery reported, no shop destroyed, nothing like that happens. Come this week on Tuesday, the narrative changes. The ground is changing softly. Like the ground is changing.
A section of Azimio coalition leaders have expressed support for the Gen Z-led protests that forced the government to shelve the 2024-25 finance bill. The leaders, while flanking Azimio principal Raila Odinga at the 10th anniversary of Mama Rosa Oyo, mother of Raila's spouse Ida Odinga, have also pressured President William Ruto to cut down on his cabinet as a way of implementing austerity and as a show of...
It is like besieging parliament for them to do the right thing.
Was the plan to enter parliament?
There was no plan to enter parliament.
It was to be outside on
Occupy the parliament outside and then make them do the right thing.
Just to apply pressure by your presence.
To have them aware that the president...
We are outside and we are watching you.
Okay.
And we begged the police, said, protect parliament. Come and surround the entire parliament. You're going to be outside saying this is what you want. Let them hear us as they vote. Let them hear us as they debate.
Okay.
That was the plan.
Okay.
And even if you look at what Giuliani said, you know what? Carry those small speakers. Come, let's sing, let's dance. Come with their favorite songs. It was a protest party. It's like a block party. We are watching you, but we're doing it in a cool way. Then doctors came and said we're going to have medical tents. Even this week, actually, someone had volunteered to give us toilets in the city. Then the mosque, Jamia Mosque, opened the doors, and Family Basilica opened the doors. It's actually a peaceful movement to hold our leaders to account. It was just a peaceful thing. And everything was being done within the constitution.
So what happened?
So what happens, internally, the government is at war with itself. That's the truth. So people in the government see an opportunity to undermine their boss and to do their own things. And they do what they did in Juja Farm. They decide particular members of parliament from Nairobi area and Kiambu area, Kiambu County, are going to hire goons. And when Kome knew there were going to be goons, he locked down the city not to allow people to come in. And we should actually open the city because it would have actually had more protesters who are peaceful than goons. Because the goons are not many, but they're more violent. So we learn the goons are going to come to the city. We tell the police. Even Nuruddin knows about this thing. No, it was not a secret there were going to be goons in the city. But I also think Kome played into the goons' hands. Because what actually happened, when the goons showed up, the police retreated. And they left the people to loot shops. But I also think the head of state actually was at play in this game because by the looting happening and shops being destroyed and courts being burnt and city hall and parliament, and I come back to the parliament fire, it gave a chance for the head of state to actually deploy the military. But at the onset, they knew there was going to be goons in that city. What they could have done actually, withdraw the police from the peaceful protesters and go protect property. But what did they do instead? They shot peaceful protesters. They shot at people. They killed people. So the entire country is in mourning, and because the police allowed goons to infiltrate a peaceful protest and cause damage. The last 1 week, we've had 2 peaceful protests. This week, politicians got involved, and that happened. And what is very sad is that this country does not hold leaders to account. Last year, there was the expressway damage, and people died. It was sponsored violence. No one was held to account. And because we never hold leaders accountable when they hire goons, they're allowed to do that over and over again, because their playbook is actually, if you get resistance, you hire goons. When people oppose you, you hire goons. Like yesterday, Rongata Ronga is actually another good example. There's an activist in the community who sent a message to the OCS, which I have screenshots, and the local NIS is telling them the MP of the area is organizing a counter protest, and it's going to be bad, because what you promise goons when you give them a job, you tell them, listen, I'm going to give you 1,000 shillings each. I'll protect you from the police, but you have a chance to steal. So when goons come, they're coming to cause mayhem and steal, because they know very well who's going to get blamed. The people, the organizers of the original protest.
Yeah. On Tuesday.
Yes.
At this point in the afternoon, when people then gained entry into Parliament, where were you?
I was near Parliament, and I went all the way to Parliament, and then they realized there were goons all over, and there was police shooting people.
How did you identify them as goons?
They raided there's a restaurant opposite City Hall.
Yeah.
There's a new restaurant. There's a Coca-Cola distributor.
It's called Ashaki.
Yeah, Ashaki, and then there's a Coca-Cola distributor. They broke into that. There were protein fences and carrying them away. I even met someone in the National Assembly fridge.
So it was clear that
someone was carrying a fridge.
Okay.
Yeah, Alibaba fridge, and I realized this is not your ordinary protesters.
These are not your guys.
So what they decided to do is to withdraw and start telling people to go home, because it's going to become bad. But when you talk about the Parliament and what actually happened at Parliament, the people who went to Parliament first actually did not go and cause any damage. The destruction and the breaking of chairs and the fire at Parliament was caused by police officers. What the police did actually, to just create this confusion, to justify the killings, they set fire. If you go to Parliament, you go behind Parliament where there's a fire. Actually, any media house actually go and do a checkup. At the back of the Kenyatta Museum, at the back, that's where the fires were lit. If those guys are planning to light a fire, it would have been said Parliament.
So it wasn't inside Parliament?
It was, no. And then the people who were inside Parliament, and you can see they're doing selfies and videos. The protesters who made inside Parliament did not break things. They were doing pictures and selfies and sitting on the chairs. But when they left, the police came and said, we need to justify the massacre. And they broke up a few things here and there. The destruction and the fire at Parliament was done by police officers.
So not even the goons?
Not the goons. Let me tell you, you're trying to get into Parliament, and you're trying to see, what can I do here? Or what can I take? So they went and ate. Some guys were eating. Also, what can I carry away? You don't go there and say, let me start a fire. So the fire was actually done later. So go to Parliament today, and this I heard from a member of Parliament, go to Parliament today, go and check where the fires were. The particular fire that you saw was at the security office, that is the guys who guard the mausoleum, where they sit. No one would have gone behind Parliament to light a fire. You light fire in front of Parliament, or you burn the Parliament itself. They did not do that. So the state allowed goons to do these things. Then the state did a bit of cover-up by setting fires around Parliament to show that the country is under siege.
Okay, so we saw an interesting video of the Tuesday happenings, which, gives rise to what you're saying now. When you realized that things were actually going south, and you are now telling people, and we saw it over socials as well, go home, leave the city, because things are about to get ugly. But you were told, you're not our leader.
I got punched in the face.
It was interesting to see that happened. But there was actually the call for people to disengage from what was happening at that point, because it did get pretty ugly, and say, then now go home. But that was not heeded too. some people, quite a number of people did try to leave the city. But then there was still the insistence on staying. Who were those who insisted on staying? Was it a mix of people, protesters who were previously peaceful, in addition to the goons who were there?
So there were protesters actually who are ignorant. They've never done this before. And Rex Masai was shot at night. And what normally happens when it gets dark, the police are chasing people to go home. But where are you going to? And there are no buses. And there are no bodas in town. And then you get mugged, because even my nieces and nephews, 4 of them. So my niece came with her friends to the protest. She's 18 and she's in high school. And on their way home, they got mugged, all of them, and they're almost beaten. And there were 4 small girls. And so my idea was, it was before 4 p.m. Say, go home because it's early and you can walk in groups. But you see, there were goons who were trying to get, let's say, so they can rob people. And then, you know, because there were so many protesters on Kenyatta Avenue and Koinange Street, there was absence of police. So it means you had more goons at that particular time than peaceful people. Because by that time, what had come out, people were burning the Supreme Court, people were trying to burn City Hall. And let me tell you, from experience, I've been to many, many protests. Peaceful protesters don't burn down things. They understand those things. You don't go unless you have a criminal intent. And no one comes to a protest as a peaceful protester with criminal intent. You don't start burning things and hitting police with stones, because you understand very well, you throw stones, police have guns.
Sure.
Even yesterday's protest, you saw people throwing stones at the police. I'm like, nah, you're not peaceful protesters.
So a number of things happened. I mean, all of this. So Tuesday just became quite a thing. And then we saw, sporadic other activities that happened in other parts of the city and the country. Which all then culminated in the president speaking on Tuesday night. Right? Wednesday night, he spoke. And it was the complete withdrawal and rejection. So it seemed like there was an answer to what was being asked for by the protest that started a week before that. Was that enough?
So number one, on Tuesday, the president lacks compassion and empathy, and he came and accused people of treason. There was no treason from the protesters. The treason was committed by the state by trying to overthrow the will of the people and the voice of the people. And the president's language was very dehumanizing, because people were in mourning. Mothers had lost their babies, people had lost their spouses. It was just a sad day for the country. And the president is supposed to be a unifier, not a divider. His language, his tone was just off. And it speaks about a man who doesn't even know what he's doing. Because if you're used to having your way, then you get challenged by 19, 18-year-old kids telling you, you know what, that's not the way to go. If you're going to spend our money, you need to explain where you're spending our money and where you're going to spend that money. So the president was challenged. Then he came out guns blazing. And people tell him we can't do that. So the following day, because he's a puppet of the West, IMF, World Bank, and the people that he's signing all these deals with, tell him you can't speak like that. Then he comes back and lies to the country that 6 people died. And that's not true. So is the man in charge, or the man doesn't know what's really happening, to a level where the president has to actually call the military to his help? That means he's not fully in control of the government.
So the rejection of the bill in its entirety then was essentially not enough. Is that what you're saying?
So was it enough? It's too little, too late. People did not have to die for him to reject the bill. People have been talking about for weeks, saying this bill is bad for the country. And the argument is very, very simple. If you don't have enough money, you budget well. If you don't have enough money, you don't buy carpets and luxurious cars and you do renovations. If you don't have money, you don't give your wife and your deputy's spouse over $1 billion shillings, 1.3 billion. Actually, the Gen Zs actually have a problem. They say, you work here, you work here, you work here. Your spouses don't get salary from this place. Why are you giving your spouse a salary and they don't have a job? And they don't have a job. What's the job description that you have to be given over 700 million shillings? People are saying, if your game is that low, man, raise your game so you don't have to give your wife so much money. And there's so many illegalities in that budget. You remember there was a guy called, was a finance minister called Uhuru Kenyatta. And then he tried to do a heist with that computer error. You remember that computer error many years ago? And this is actually same kind of theft. The guy wants to budget with money in his pocket. He wants to get all the money, then spend the way he wants. We're saying it's our taxes. And we're saying, the president claims, because I don't think it's true, that we're servicing debt. We want to know what debt are we paying, because we audit the debt. Because the biggest thing they ever said when he was running for office, we got empty coffers, money was stolen. But he has never made any effort to go after the stolen money. So whose debt are we paying?
Is this a leaderless movement, like they've been saying?
Yes, I think it's a more horizontal leadership. Everyone is at power. So they're saying we all have one voice, we want the same things. In a way, yes, it is.
But are there no influencers within this group? Like there are people who will come together and when someone says something, then they seem to have sway.
There are people who are very instrumental in the movement, and I think Hanifa is one of them. I think Tops, she leads, she's there, she's compassionate, she cares, been raising money. Then the others, there's Crazy Nairobi and there's Osumo. They might differ on opinion and tactics, but they are still all on the same page. Yeah.
The people who organize the X spaces,
yes,
like the ones we're seeing running for many hours and very many people joining in, are they the same ones that we see on the street? Or is there like a different thing that's happening online? I think something else that's happening on the ground.
So there's more people who are vocal online and more less visible offline, and then the people who are more visible offline and less vocal online. So there's a bit of both.
So do you want to
yes, I wanted to ask. You see, when one talks about the leadership issue, the presence or the absence of it, I think the question is being asked in the traditional sense of leadership, because political movements have had to do the rallies and then gatherings in open spaces, and people stand up to speak, so you can easily recognize. But if you're talking about leadership in this era, it looks like who is followed, who is listened to, who has people who are tuned into the message that they have. Which takes me to how long has this conversation been taking place? Because in my opinion, it appears that the dissatisfaction has existed for a long time. And somehow people coalesced now around the finance bill. The finance bill was the tipping point. They were already happy, they were dissatisfied, then the finance bill comes about, and the question has been asking has been answered. This is now the straw that broke the camel's back, the Selapana. This one. And yet, the leadership that is being spoken of, there are many people who have voices that people follow and listen to. It's not one person. But on this particular matter, they seem to have agreed. And so they've come together. And it's a diversity. Now, this is new from my opposition. It's new. So one can't say it is Raila Odinga who has called this rally.
And it really helps because there's no one to compromise.
But then again, we've seen this kind of things happen. Like in Egypt, it was a leaderless movement organized on social media that ended up with people pouring onto the streets in Cairo, in Tahrir Square, that forced the president, Mubarak, out of office. And then thereafter, all these people retreated, and it appears like, their fire was just snuffed out. What they were pushing for was not realized. There was no one to carry on that movement. We saw it again in Khartoum. People came out and they wanted a change. They were tired, they were pissed off, and the price of bread was the tipping point at that time. And they came out and they said, okay, so enough of this thing, the military dictatorship, Bashir, get out, go. They go back home, look what happened. So the issue I'm asking is, if there is no leader, but then we have seen lessons from elsewhere where these leaderless movements have actually ended up achieving something, but not achieving something at the same time. What happens? What lessons do we learn?
Actually, I lived in New York when Occupy Wall Street was happening. And Occupy Wall Street was the same model. No leader. You come to they used to have daily meetings, you come and meet, you agree what you're going to agree, and then if you don't agree, you don't implement. And what ended up happening is that they stayed there for months, they got zero results, and people went to jail. Like not a single Wall Street banker went to jail, but the protesters went to jail. And I would advise the Gen Zs to find a way to get people they trust, to lead the conversation and say, this is what you want, and to have non-negotiables and say, This is how you become the leader. These are non-negotiables. This is how you represent. Because if you want to implement ideas or execute ideas, who does that? Because right now I think that a lady like Hanifa is carrying a very big burden. She's going to many hospitals. She's handling phone calls. Her emotional and physical state is stretched. And so, but if she had a committee to lead, like Mao Zedong, it was a committee that helped implement the Great Leap. If you look, Communist China is led by a committee. And so form a committee that can actually help articulate your issues, and then maybe find elders to guide you on how to go about it. Because they have a moment. And if they don't seize the moment, it will fizzle out. Right now, they have everybody's attention. So make the demands now and make non-negotiables. I think they can still do a 1 million march and get the government to give them security and to stop killing them. Because the government this week allowed goons hired by politicians to kill its young people, which was a betrayal of what they're trying to do. And the things that happened this week are unforgivable. If Ruto thinks there's anything he's going to do in the next 2 years, or in the next 1 week, that will make these young people forgive him, he can forget about it. These are unforgivable. Peaceful kids went to the streets and the government let them down. He'll never be forgiven. Our parents might have forgotten about post-election violence. Some of us might have deliberately tried to erase PV from our minds and his role in it. But this particular incident, these kids with their phones, some of them saw it for the first time, brains scattered on the pavement. The government stole their innocence. The Gen Z have not gone through the Moi era of tribal clashes. They didn't go through post-election violence. They've never gone through such a thing. And they saw it on TV, and some saw it firsthand. And they'll never forget, and they'll never forgive.
They've been radicalized.
Completely. Their innocence is gone. They were innocent on Monday. Now they're no longer innocent. Then Githurai happened. Then Rongai happened. They're like, dude, what kind of a president are you? Then, yesterday, Thursday, when they went to the streets with flowers, they're getting arrested for carrying flowers. You're arresting a child for going to mourn someone who died. How messed can you be as a president and as a government? Arresting kids for going to mourn their dead friends.
So which way forward? Because you see, we're hearing two sides of a conversation. Like yesterday, there were two conversations happening at the same time.
Yeah.
There was a conversation that said, let's continue the march.
Yes.
And there was another conversation that was saying, okay, guys, let's galvanize the win and plan for the next steps.
Yes.
And it appears that those two are conflicting and they're still not sure which way to go.
And there was also some people who were paid by the state to incite young people to go to State House, which now brought in a lot of division for yesterday and a lot of fears, which made parents tell their Gen Zs don't go to the streets because going to parliament will get you killed. You see, the problem we have right now, because the government doesn't know how to control the narrative, there is a lot of infiltration and a lot of bad messaging to confuse the people. Now, what next first? We need to mourn the dead. We need to bury our brothers and sisters. We need to discuss compensation. I think before we go to the next level of what happens next, the bill is dead, and we need a people's bill. If the government doesn't have money, we need to address how it can cut its expenditure. But if you get to that juncture, because that's going to be done on the parliament level and other level, what do you want? You want the truth. What really happened? The people responsible for the violence in this particular week need to be held accountable and prosecuted. If it's the president who hired goons or the deputy president or Boniface Mwangi, we need to be held accountable for our actions. We cannot move on like nothing happened. Listen, the Gen Zs, there's no one to do a handshake with. You know, in the past, there's protests, disagreements, there's a handshake.
There's one leader.
There's no one to do a handshake. So if you think you're going to call Boniface or Hanifa or Sumo or Chris Nairobi and whoever it is and do a handshake, it won't work.
So who's going to drive this conversation?
The demands for now can be made openly. The demands have been said. First, Kome must resign. You can't have an incompetent IG who sends police to kill kids and does not protect property. If Nurudil failed in intelligence, he must resign. People who are irresponsible and did not abdicated their duties must be held accountable. Kabisa. And then let's talk about, we won't wait for 10 years to compensate. You know, like the way if parliamentarians get everything like this.
Yeah.
We want to know how many died and compensation like this. The And I think also most of us go to Raila Odinga because Raila Odinga has had many opportunities to change how things work in this country, but he failed. Because every time people have protested and he was involved in a protest and he does a handshake, he does not ensure compensation for people who died. The Gen Zs are saying those who died in this particular violence must be compensated. We must talk about compensation and they must be celebrated. They must be remembered as heroes because they're trying to save their country from greedy members of parliament who had become a rubber stamp for the executive.
Bonnie, let me ask the question.
Yeah.
Have all these handshakes have they all morphed into a situation where the citizenry don't end up getting the rights that they wanted?
Yeah, every time there's a handshake, it's a compromise that does not benefit the citizens.
If we go back into history, Kadu folding, joining KANU, that was a handshake.
Yes, but there was not so much violence, actually. There was actually little violence.
There was none.
There was none, yeah.
There was none.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking the question. Then I bring it up, 2007, 2008, we have a handshake.
Yeah.
Was that handshake necessary? Did it benefit people in any way?
Okay, we got a new constitution because we had 4 agenda.
Yes.
And we didn't address the 4th one. So there's justice, actually. And this country works very well on every aspect.
Yes.
But when it comes to justice, you don't want to do that because you have to jail people. And this country has a weakness or a fear of jailing politicians. They handle with kids' gloves. So when a politician hires goons, they're not held accountable for hiring goons, but the goons end up in court for theft or stealing or such things. So I think this is we have crossed the Rubicon. We'll never go back. And this particular incident has defined the rest of the rest of this. What happens going forward for the entire existence of this country changed this week because 70% of the kids in this country are under 35. About 60% are Gen Zs. They're going to run this country on their terms, not on Ruto's terms. He might have the military and the police, but the Gen Zs said, no, you can't do that. If you go online right now, they have zero respect for him. You go back to his village, they have zero respect for him because you don't kill kids. You might have tear gas kids at Langata Primary School, but you can't do that again in 2024.
Yeah. There's the idea that, and when we're looking at just what you're talking about now, and if we're going to look in the next few years, that it will be a different leadership. There will be different leadership, whether we want to admit it or not. And that there's certain processes within a formal state.
Yes.
We're not talking about it in a state of anarchy. Within a formal state, that there are certain processes then that have to take place. And then one would say, is it necessary then to have somebody who does take up that position of leadership to drive the agenda?
There's that part. I think one of the things that we're saying for the next steps, we're telling the president, constitute IBC right away. We want to start recalling members of parliament. Like if you cannot dissolve your government, we want you to constitute IBC so that you can have a functioning electoral body to actually do the job. So we're not looking, we are talking about Kenyans actually. We're looking at this thing in how do you take back the country and run it. You take it from the hands of the goons and the mafia and say, how do we have a country that respects the rule of law? And it's actually very sad that when you talk about the rule of law, the president has spoken, yes. The Chief Justice has not said anything about the killings and what even happened to her office. And she's very silent about it. So we're saying we need to take back our country and run this country. And how do you do that? It's through elections, actually.
Yes.
So the Gen Zs are not saying they're going to go and overthrow the government, but they say they can actually put the pressure on the government to resign. So, and they're very creative and very innovative. So, going to find new ways to bring the government to its knees. Right now, there is an entire campaign about boycotting politicians' businesses, deplatforming them. So, when they come to a church, you leave or you boo them. There are many things they're going to do to undermine. And when you do that, when you undermine authority, they lose legitimacy. They become illegitimate. And that's one way of taking back your power.
For how long can this window remain open? How long do you think this window will remain? There's an open window, right, for taking things to the next level.
Yes.
How long do you see it remaining open?
As long as the anger persists. And the anger is going to be there for a while. And the truth is, what the politicians did to the Kenyan people this week will be done unto them slowly for the next couple of years. That bitterness is there. You don't kill kids. You don't do that.
Yeah, but then there's something that's critical, like Ndo is saying.
Yeah.
So you are angry and disappointed with the current crop of leaders. Okay. So you've got to start identifying then who the next leader is. And we keep saying it here on this show very many times that Kenya has had a problem for a long time of voting out leaders and not really considering who you're voting in. So people don't vote in leaders. You're like so and so, hata tujamuona hapa, hata amefanya nini, hata huyu harudi. And they say even we better elect a dog.
Yeah.
So there is that danger there. If you don't start thinking and having an open conversation, Project 2027 or 2032, where 2032 for sure, many of the current crop of senior leaders will be getting out. How do you start working towards that 2027, 2032, where you have a new crop of leaders, but those leaders know what the people need? They know that they have got to be answerable to the people. They know that they are actually accountable in everything that they do to the people.
So the know for a fact is that if Ruto survives this week and this year, he's a one-term president. The events of this week are unforgivable. So he's not going to come back.
You say that with certainty?
Yes. The people have spoken. And so I don't think he's going to come back. You know, the truth is he ran on a platform of hustlers and gave them jobs. They don't have jobs. He's overtaxing them. He's taken away healthcare, taken away their education. There's nothing that is actually working in this country. And so, unless a miracle happens, he's a one-term president. The second thing is, these young people are taking voters' cards and they want to vote for leaders who love and care for them, because they don't feel like they're loved and cared for and respected by their leaders. Because the reason why you elect a member of parliament, they have enough care and love for the people to go and serve the people and do the best for the people.
It's easy to say, Bonnie. Everybody who will tell you they've participated in an election, they've been electing somebody whom they think loves and cares.
And somebody even has a track record who has proved that he was already doing good. That's why they even elected him in the first place.
Then you go to a house and then you find...
Yes.
And then things change.
And then it change.
Yes.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean you give up, brother. It doesn't mean you give up, my sister.
So how do we help the young people
identify?
To identify. Yeah. So how do we all then start changing and thinking?
Eric,
how then do we identify the leader?
Would you permit me to...
Please.
To say something not contrary. Let me go back to what you have said. It isn't who we select. It's how we hold them accountable. We have seen people who we know to be good going into this and changing. The accountability factor has never been there.
Right.
Everything that is being done, if there is no accountability, where the elected member knows I'm going to be held accountable. Bonnie, you said it. I will not speak in church. People will not attend your rallies. And the next thing they do, they'll tell you,
they'll recall you.
We are recalling you. Now, that is holding them to account. Until that is understood, it doesn't matter who we elect, we're going to continue having this problem.
So the secret ingredient in this formula is making sure that accountability stays throughout the 5 years.
It is throughout the 5 years.
I also think, yes, true. I also think that if we had strong institutions, we didn't have to do that because, for example, it would be much easier to recall a member of parliament. If you commit a crime, you are prosecuted and you go to jail. Now, the problem we have is that we have very weak institutions that bend towards the executive or people with money.
But Bonnie, you more than anybody else should realize that everything we're talking about, institutions that have people in it.
Yes.
You more than anybody else knows that the power that is given through example and people understanding that there are consequences for what I say and what I do, it doesn't matter where you are. It helps bring about change. If the example from the top that is expected isn't there, then the example has to come from the sovereign, from the bottom, and then it has to go up.
So how do we change that?
Yeah.
There's the Kenya we want, but do you have the Kenyans for that Kenya we want? So we need to create the Kenyans for the Kenya we want.
We already have those Kenyans.
So how do you change their values?
It's the changed values that has brought to this discussion. People who are willing to protest and say we don't like this, but we're doing it peacefully.
Yes.
Like the realization that you can.
We are seeing it unfolding before our very, 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 very eyes.
There you go. So the Gen Zs actually are the people who are going to change this country, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Unless
if they stay the cause.
Yes, unless we poison them with money and positions. And that's what we do.
And even if you do, can you poison all of them?
Those who were youthful in the 80s into the 90s, they pushed and saw the repealing of Section 2A.
Yes.
They pushed and they saw an opposition candidate and grouping of candidates coming to power. They pushed them to come together, and so coming to power, they gave up the fight, man. They didn't give up. Point. Or they changed, or whatever happened.
Or they got comfortable.
They got into power and forgot.
Yeah.
I think what the Gens are going to do is going to run away from party politics. Because the other thing is actually the party with the biggest leader or the most known leader get the most votes.
Yeah.
But if we decide to do an a la carte menu where you just elect the best individuals, not political party, not alignment, not money, and it's going to change. What people have realized right now is that how you vote affects your next 5 years. How you vote affects how you live every day, your security, the hospital that you go to, the education in the local school, if they have teachers or not. And so, and young people are translating that into everyday living. And by doing that, they're going to see who is best for them. And I think right now, people are seeing who is best for them. They might not have the whole picture or the bigger picture, but slowly they're going to learn that. I think one of the things that I would actually advise Gen Zs is to get a political education, because it gives you a roadmap into getting to power. You realize that marching alone doesn't get you to State House. You need to know what you do once you get to State House.
I've said it before. Sometimes I look at it and I'm seeing the excitement, and then at the same time I'm looking back and thinking, oh my goodness, this is such a pivotal point, and it stands a risk of getting lost just like that. We were saying the other day, the SARS, we were here when in Nigeria, the youthful people came out and they were agitating against this police outfit. It was the one thing that they all came towards. And then it led them to the next election, the conversation ahead of the election, saying we are also going to, in fact, register as voters. We are going to participate in the election. We are going to get rid of these old people and we're going to bring our young person. Yeah. And then on the day of the election, they just didn't turn up. And it didn't happen.
And, and a very old president was elected.
And the oldest of them.
of them all.
Okay. You need to have a bit of optimism here. So what can I say? So what they can do to seize the moment is create cells in the community. Wherever you came from, get 10 of people. There's something we do in our church called Ecclesia, where you meet once a week and you study the Bible and you discuss what you learned in church on Sunday. Get books. Discuss a book every week and start learning these things. So by the time you're going to fight the system, you know how you're fighting and the tools to use. We had created some manuals and things that we wanted to give them, some reading materials that they need to read to do that. But we need to, as we try to see what lies next year, let's talk about what happened the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Kenyans came out for themselves. Yep. Because the members of parliament let them down. The leaders let them down. We should celebrate that.
Yep.
That's a big win. The entire country, out of the 45 counties, 37 had protests. Across, no budget, no leader, and they came out with one message: reject the finance bill.
Yep.
And the president was still deaf when you have that 7 counties say no to you, and then you still say no, it was treason. It wasn't treason, man. It was people power. So let's celebrate that, because that people power is going to change this country. I celebrate the Gen Zs, and I hope that next week the government will allow us to mourn the dead. We can do a memorial concert in the different counties and say, let's, like the way we did for Garissa, can we do a concert for will they allow us to use Uhuru Park? Will they allow us to close Konanga Street and do a concert? I don't know. We're going to try and do that. And the artists who came to the protest this week and the last week can come and we just mourn the dead and live stream the dead and say their names as we demand justice for those who died.
Indeed. Boniface Mwangi, activist, thank you very much for joining us.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
I I feel like I want to hide myself because the first thing they see when they look at me is my face.
You get worried to even go out there because it's really uncomfortable.
These products really helped reduce my breakouts. Now that my skin has improved, I'm saying goodbye to blemishes.
Our next guest is in the studio. I personally must say that it was a long, we spoke on the phone many times. It was a long time coming, but he is here today and I'm very, very happy. It would have been nice to have him when he was, in other positions, but I think it's even better that he's here now. And before I even tell you what his name is, he stood on the steps of a famous house and told us how things would happen. And because of him, there are phrases that we now use in Kenya today, and they even become memes. Fellow Kenyans.
What he does for a living.
Fellow Kenyans is here, Mama.
I sell lands. I sell lands.
He's a land buying and land selling company.
When all the nations were shut
but
down.
he's also an activist.
Fellow Kenyan.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Very well.
Yeah.
Good to see you here. Good to see you.
Started with
I
fellow
wish I was
Kenyans.
happy.
And
I was back
Kenyans
here
knew
on
that they
happy
were fellow
times.
But
Kenyans.
the interesting thing
It's always a pleasure to have you.
It did.
At whatever time. And this is actually also a very important juncture in the history of the democratization of this country.
On a daily
It's
basis.
a good moment as well.
Now, as far as government communication goes,
patia huyu jamaa proverb ya wiki.
the Honorable Minister
Nimekuja na yangu bro.
is a communication
Wacha
person.
tusikie yako wewe
Yeah.
mgeni bwana.
That-
Nimekam na yangu nimesema
hasn't been met
You
yet.
have a proverb.
I have a proverb
We've
for
never
the day,
seen
man.
government communicating
The
that
child is not
effectively.
embraced by the
Before
village.
then, and
burn
even
it down
after.
to feel its warmth.
It was beautiful to watch.
Yes.
We knew what was going
The
on.
child
We
who
knew what
is
was
not
going on
embraced
with
by the
COVID.
village.
Yes, we'll burn
If
it
there was
down.
burn
one
it
case
down
in
to
the middle
feel
of
its
nowhere,
warmth.
You've
we
been
That's
knew
it.
Well,
And
there's similarity
it was
here.
him
Because the problem
who stood on the
Mauritania is
steps.
yes, what a child
and gave
says,
the information and
they have heard
communication
if
from
the
home.
numbers went down. So we were synced.
Kabisa.
We were of a similar mind.
You're saying the same thing.
Yes, we were.
Okay. How do you interpret Bonnie's proverb?
If a child sees no value in that home, burning it to ashes is of no consequence to them. Yes. People don't burn things they value. No. If they see no value, it's very easy to burn it because you actually have no connection with it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, there's the other side of probably it's talking to the village. If you do not offer warmth to this child, the child will look for warmth and the child will burn down the village in pursuit of the warmth. So there's both sides.
Kweli kabisa.
Yeah? Okay, now you interpret city's proverb.
What was the proverb again?
Right. What the proverb was, again, what a child says they have heard from home.
It's true. It's monkey see, monkey do. So they have seen it before. They're going to do it.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the Gen Zs, they've seen some of us protest. Now they're doing it. Yeah.
You think they're copying what they have been seeing and hearing from home?
No, they're actually doing it in a smarter way.
Right.
They don't want violence. They understand the Constitution, Article 37 of the Constitution. They're cool kids. They mobilize themselves. Excuse me. Like in the past where you could actually maybe try to do an event, or if it's an event to pay people to come and transport them. These kids, no. They carpool, they come together, they take matatus, they walk, and they come because they're committed. They have a bigger picture of this country than we do have. So I see the similarity that they learn from our mistakes, they learn from our fears, and they came back fearless, saying, we want better.
They have iterated. But if you've organized demos before,
yes,
right? And just like you've mentioned here briefly, when you're organizing a demo, you've got to think end to end, including the logistics of how this demo will take place. This one, people have just been dumbfounded and wondering, okay, so how did this begin? How did it begin? I'm sure you've sat down and asked yourself and tried to trace the steps back. How did this particular Gen Z protest begin?
So there's no one source of beginning. There's excuse me, sorry. So this is what actually happens. Members of parliament say they're going to pass the bill, whatever happens. People go online very, very upset. And David D calls Kenyans digital wankers. That particular day, I was at a funeral at Langata Cemetery, Njambi Koikai's funeral.
Yeah.
And I was with a colleague of mine, and we were going to cover the funeral. And I said, you know what? So we're actually covering how the state of Langata Cemetery, because it's full.
Yeah.
So we said, let's go there to bury Njambi and do a story about the cemetery.
And also highlight
the state of the cemetery. It was full like 20 years ago. So we're there, and I scroll online, and I see that you're being called digital wankers. And I'm like, dude, we're not digital wankers. We can do more than that. So I tell my colleagues, you're going to go to Parliament and do a video. So I go to Parliament, and you do a video called Occupy Parliament, and say, we're going to come and occupy this Parliament next week. And you put the video online, 1 million+ views on TikTok, and people pick it up and say, we own this idea. So it moves from me say, let's occupy Parliament, to everyone says we're going to reject this finance bill in totality. Before the beginning was, there are elements of the bill that we don't want. But it became, you know what, this thing, don't even amend it, we reject it. So the following week you say, you know what, we call guys in the say, what can we do? What you normally do, you design placards, say guys are going to show up, but people actually send themselves. You tell them, come with a placard, come with everything. So it moves from being one team's idea to everyone's idea. So it's owned by everyone. We notify the police and said on Tuesday we're going to go there, and we go there on Tuesday. There are many people. The police come as usual, tear gas. We say we're going to go back on Thursday. Then we go back on Thursday. Then we say we're going to go back the following week. At every single juncture, we let the police know we're going back, and you're going to be many. But what they decide to do, you know, the state hasn't changed its tactics. So week 1, that's when the abduction started. People get arrested. Then Law Society of Kenya, Feather Thiambo, man, I'm a big fan. I think she's a patriot, and I think she's the best so far under the new constitution dispensation. So the police do what they normally do. They arrest hundreds of people, like 400 people are taken to Central, Kamkunji, all over. The lawyers go, LSK fights for them, some are taken to court, and the court acquits. So this boldens with the people to go back to the streets. Now, the following week, which is this week now, politicians realize they're losing the narrative.